One crazy night turned two shy teenagers into masters of their own fantasy. But what they created quickly went far beyond their control. Weird Science isn't just a movie, it's a chaotic journey between imagination and reality. And after nearly 40 years, what really happened to the cast? Let's find out. Number 1. Anthony Michael Hall as Gary Wallace. The neon lights of the 1980s still flickered in teenage bedrooms filled with posters and primitive computers. And at 17 years old, Anthony Michael Hall stepped into Weird Science carrying a skinny frame, anxious eyes, and an energy so awkward yet genuine it felt almost unacted because it was nearly who he really was. Gary Wallace in the film is not the kind of hero Hollywood is used to. He is the embodiment of teenage insecurity. A boy constantly bullied, always left out of every social scene, and always craving recognition, opening the film with helplessness as he watches others succeed while he remains trapped in his own shadow. And then, in one impulsive night, Gary and Wyatt create Lisa, a perfect woman born from imagination. This turning point pushes Gary into the strangest coming-of-age journey, from fear to boldness, from weakness to confrontation. Each phase in the film strikes deeply into Gary's psychology, as Lisa forces him out of his comfort zone, teaching him how to speak, how to push back, and most importantly, how to believe in himself. There are moments where Gary trembles before crowds, is humiliated, then reborn through chaotic situations like a wild party or a confrontation with bullies. And it is this transformation that makes the role stand out, not because Gary becomes a hero, but because he learns to no longer be invisible. Anthony Michael Hall turned Gary into an icon of 80s teenagers, an image anyone who has ever been underestimated could see themselves in. And what makes it special is that he didn't need big acting, everything felt natural, real, and authentic. But behind the glow of that teen movie prince, Anthony's life was not entirely smooth. After Weird Science, he continued to succeed in classic teen films, but gradually became typecast, then tried to break away by taking on more mature roles. A difficult journey as Hollywood had grown used to seeing him as the nerdy kid. In real life, he avoided major scandals but still went through struggling periods in his career, at times nearly forgotten before making a stronger return in television and mature film roles, a kind of rebirth much like Gary in the movie. As of 2026, Anthony Michael Hall is 58 years old, from that 17-year-old boy to a seasoned man, continuing to work in the entertainment industry with more stability and depth. No longer the trembling boy facing the world, but someone who understands his place in it. And when looking back at Gary Wallace, the boy who once used a computer to create a dream, we realize that growing up is not about becoming someone else, but daring to become yourself. And perhaps that is also Anthony Michael Hall's real story, a man who spent years stepping out of the shadow of the very role that made his name. Number 2. Ilan Mitchell-Smith as Wyatt Donnelly. If Gary Wallace is a flame ignited by insecurity, then Wyatt Donnelly is the quiet current running everything a 16-year-old in 1985, with eyes that always seem to apologize to the world, entering the story not to change it, but simply to survive each day under the shadow of his cruel older brother. From the very first moments, Wyatt appears as the perfect victim. Intelligent, imaginative, yet suffocated by fear, his room being his only refuge, where the computer becomes his companion. And it is there, on a rainy night with trembling keystrokes, that Wyatt and Gary do the unthinkable, create Lisa, not just a woman, but the embodiment of everything they lack. But what makes Wyatt different is not the act of creating Lisa, but how he reacts to its consequences. When everything begins to spiral out of control, wild parties, strange creatures appearing, bullies returning for revenge, Wyatt does not instantly become a hero. He panics, hesitates, wants to go back to the beginning, and that is what makes his journey painfully real. The character's climax does not lie in external chaos, but in the moment Wyatt faces Chet, the brother who has haunted him his entire life. When fear reaches its peak and there is no way back, Wyatt is forced to change, not through physical strength, but by standing up straight for the first time and refusing to bow his head. And Lisa, a product of imagination, becomes the catalyst that helps Wyatt realize his own worth. This role stands out not because of flashy lines or dramatic action, but because of subtle evolution from a boy who avoids everything to someone who dares to confront. An internal journey portrayed by Ilan Mitchell-Smith through the smallest details. His gaze, breathing, and hesitation in every line, yet unlike many of his co-stars, Ilan Mitchell-Smith did not continue a Hollywood path after the film's success. After Weird Science, he gradually stepped away from the spotlight, choosing a completely different path: academia, becoming a professor specializing in medieval history, a surprising turn that also reflects his true nature. Quiet, thoughtful, and not belonging to the glamorous world. no major scandals, no shocking downfalls. Ilan's life mirrors Wyatt's quiet but meaningful, someone who chose to live differently from expectations. As of 2026, Ilan Mitchell-Smith is 57 years old. From that trembling teenager to a mature scholar standing at a lectern instead of in front of a camera. And perhaps that is the perfect ending for Wyatt Donnelly not becoming a hero in others' eyes, but finding where he truly belongs, because sometimes growing up is not about conquering the world, but daring to leave it to live the life you choose. Number 3. Kelly LeBrock as Lisa. Kelly LeBrock appeared on screen at the age of 25, and she did not simply play Lisa, she became Lisa, a legendary beauty icon of the 1980s. Born from the imagination of two teenage boys, yet possessing the power of a god-controlling reality. From the very first moment Lisa appears stepping out of a computer screen into the real world with confident eyes and a knowing smile, she is not a passive female character, but the central force orchestrating the entire story, the one holding control in a world Gary and Wyatt think they created. Lisa is not only beautiful, she is intelligent, sharp, and somewhat ruthless in the way she teaches the boys, step by step pushing them into the situations they fear most, from throwing a chaotic party to force them to face society, to creating surreal challenges like mutant bikers appearing to shatter their comfort zones. And the ultimate climax comes when Lisa forces them to confront their deepest fear, their own weakness. There is a compelling contradiction in Lisa. She is both a teenage fantasy and a strict mentor, both seductive and intimidating, and it is this blend that makes the character irreplaceable. Kelly LeBrock did not need overly complex acting, just her gaze and presence were enough to create a cultural icon. Lisa stands out because she does not belong to the real world, yet she is the only one who fully understands it. And in the end, once her mission is complete, she leaves, allowing Gary and Wyatt to grow, like an illusion that has fulfilled its purpose in real life. Kelly LeBrock's journey was just as dramatic as her characters. Before Weird Science, she was a famous supermodel, then entered film and quickly became a sex symbol. But her personal life was turbulent, especially her high-profile marriage to Steven Seagal, a relationship that ended in controversy and media pressure, after which she gradually withdrew from Hollywood, choosing a quieter life away from the spotlight. At one point, she nearly disappeared from the industry, vanishing much like Lisa in the film, arriving unexpectedly and leaving just as mysteriously. As of 2026, Kelly LeBrock is 65 years old. From a beauty icon who captivated a generation to a woman living a slower, more private life. Yet the image of Lisa remains immortal in cinematic memory, and looking back, we realize Lisa was never just a character, she was the fantasy everyone once desired. And also the truth everyone must face, that no magic can replace growing up. And sometimes, the person who changes your life the most is someone who never truly existed. Number 4. Bill Paxton as Chet Donnelly. No magic, no technology, just the heavy footsteps echoing on the stairs are enough to plunge the entire house into silence. That is how Chet Donnelly appears. And in 1985, when Bill Paxton took on the role at age 30, he infused the character with an energy so raw and terrifying it felt almost more real than reality. Chet is not a traditional villain. He has no plan to conquer the world, no grand ambition. He is simply the nightmare within every household, a bully living under the same roof, an older brother who uses physical power to control, threaten, and crush Wyatt's spirit. And from the very first scenes, Chet is built as an unstoppable force. He commands, insults, abuses, and the most frightening part is no one stops him. Throughout the film, Chet serves as the background pressure for the entire story, the reason Wyatt lives in fear, the root cause that drives the boys to create Lisa in an attempt to change their fate. And when everything spirals out of control, Chet becomes the final confrontation, not through direct violence, but through a reversal of power when Lisa intervenes and transforms him into a grotesque creature, exaggerating the ugliness within him. That moment is not just comedic climax, but a psychological release for Wyatt the first time the monster he feared is exposed. Ridiculed, stripped of power. The role of Chet stands out for balancing humor and horror. Bill Paxton not only made audiences hate the character, he made them remember him, because everyone has encountered a Chet in life, and that realism gives the role its weight. But behind the loud and aggressive character, Bill Paxton's real life was a remarkable artistic journey. He became a familiar face in Hollywood through numerous roles in blockbuster films, from science fiction to action, building a steady career through talent and versatility. With no major scandals or personal controversies, Paxton was respected as a dedicated professional. But his story ended in an unexpected way in 2017. He passed away at the age of 61 due to complications after surgery. A death that shocked Hollywood and left a lasting void for audiences. As of 2026, Bill Paxton would have been 71 years old if he were still alive. And every time people look back at Chet Donnelly, the terrifying yet colorful older brother, they remember not just a character, but an actor who brought life to even the simplest roles. Because sometimes, what makes us grow is not beautiful dreams, but the courage to face and overcome the very real monsters in life, and Chet is the embodiment of that. Number 5. Robert Downey Jr. As Ian. When Weird Science was released, Robert Downey Jr. was only 20 years old, a young face with mischievous eyes, a half smile, and an unpredictable energy. And even though he appeared in a supporting role as Ian, he brought a very different shade to the film's high school world. Not a fist-throwing bully like Chet, but the kind of cool kid who dominates through confidence, sarcasm, and social pressure. Ian exists as part of the teenage ecosystem, those at the top of the pyramid, where Gary and Wyatt are always excluded, and every appearance of Ian serves as a reminder that weakness is punished not only by violence, but also by ridicule. In the early scenes, Ian and his group clearly display their social power. They mock, they belittle, they turn boys like Gary into jokes, and it is Ian's very existence that makes the dream of Lisa feel necessary, as a way to strike back at a world that rejected them. But what is interesting is that as the story progresses and Lisa appears, the balance of power begins to shift. Ian, from someone in control, gradually becomes placed in a passive position, especially during the chaotic party where all social rules collapse, and those once at the top suddenly seem lost. Ian does not undergo a clear transformation like Gary or Wyatt, but that very stillness highlights the film's theme. If you do not change, the world will change you. At the time, Robert Downey Jr. was not yet a major star, but he gave Ian a unique charm, natural, spontaneous, and slightly rebellious, traits that would later become his acting signature. The role stands out not because of screen time, but because it is a key piece in the teenage puzzle representing the invisible pressure that anyone who has gone through school understands. But his real-life story is even more dramatic than any script. After early success, he fell into addiction, faced legal troubles, was arrested multiple times, and came close to losing his career entirely. Hollywood turned its back, opportunities disappeared, and the name Robert Downey Jr. became a symbol of wasted talent. Yet, like an unexpected plot twist, he returned stronger, more disciplined, and redefining himself, especially with a later iconic role that made him one of the biggest stars in the world. As of 2026, Robert Downey Jr. is 61 years old. From a 20-year-old supporting actor in Weird Science to a monument of modern cinema, and his journey is a reminder that people can make mistakes, can fall, but can also rise again and rewrite their own story. And looking back at Ian, the one who once thought he had control, we realize that sometimes those who seem the strongest are the ones who have never had to change, until life forces them to. Number 6. Vernon Wells as the General. When everything begins to slip away from reality and fall into the realm of uncontrolled imagination, Vernon Wells entered the film in 1985 at the age of 40, bringing a completely different kind of energy, not teenage, not domestic, but something wild, violent, and almost surreal. His character, the General, does not appear at the beginning, but arrives like a storm sudden, intense, and unpredictable, as if the very world Gary and Wyatt created had started generating unintended entities with a sharp-edged appearance, piercing eyes, and the presence of someone who has survived countless battles. The General feels like he stepped out of a post-apocalyptic film, and this is no coincidence. The role clearly reflects the image Vernon Wells built in Mad Max 2, where he became known for his violent antagonists. In Weird Science, the General's presence is not just for shock value, but marks an escalation in the story from teenage mischief into a world where consequences can become dangerous, where imagination is no longer harmless. Every moment he appears carries a sense of threat, forcing Gary and Wyatt, already out of control, to face the reality that they are no longer in charge. The character does not have a long developmental arc, but serves as a living warning. When you create a world, you must also accept the things you cannot control within it. Vernon Wells made the most of limited screen time, turning a supporting role into a memorable highlight through strong presence and his experience portraying outlaws. In real life, Vernon Wells was not an A-list star, but he became a familiar face in action and science fiction films, especially in roles as strong, distinctive villains, the kind of actor audiences may not immediately name, but will always recognize. His career spans decades, with no major scandals or shocking downfalls, but a steady journey acting, attending events, and maintaining his place among fans of cult cinema. As of 2026, Vernon Wells is 80 years old, from a 40-year-old man full of energy to a living icon of classic action films. And though his screen time in Weird Science was brief, the general remains like a sharp cut and the stories flow short, intense, and unforgettable, because sometimes the most frightening things in life are not what we intentionally create, but what is accidentally unleashed when we do not fully understand our own power. Number 7. Michael Berryman as Mutant Biker. When Michael Berryman entered Weird Science at the age of 37, he did not need long dialogue or a complex backstory. His mere presence was enough to make the frame feel unstable. With a unique appearance caused by a rare genetic condition that prevented normal development of sweat glands, hair, and nails, Berryman turned his own body into a form of cinematic language. And as the Mutant Biker, he became the clearest manifestation of how Gary and Wyatt's imagination had gone far beyond control. The character does not appear as a person, but as a summoned nightmare, a part of the chaotic world Lisa creates to test the boys. And every time he appears, the atmosphere instantly shifts, from humor to tension, from playful to genuinely dangerous. In the climactic scenes, the Mutant Biker and his gang storm the party, destroying all social order, smashing, threatening, and turning a familiar teenage setting into a surreal battlefield where Gary and Wyatt must face the consequences of their own actions. What makes this character memorable is not screen time, but feeling a primal sense of fear, of strangeness, of humans no longer being at the center of the world. Michael Berryman, with his horror film experience, understood how to use his gaze, movement, and silence to create maximum impact, turning a supporting role into a small cult icon. But behind the frightening image, his real life is a story of resilience. Born with a rare condition, Berryman faced countless challenges, from health issues to social prejudice. But instead of being limited, he turned his difference into an advantage, entering film and building a unique career, becoming a familiar face in horror and science fiction. With no major scandals or dramatic downfalls, his journey stands as proof that self-acceptance can become the greatest strength. As of 2026, Michael Berryman is 77 years old, from a 37-year-old man haunting the screen to a respected cult icon. And every time the Mutant Biker appears in Weird Science, it is not just a shocking moment, but a reminder that when humans play with things beyond their understanding, they may accidentally create something they cannot control. And sometimes, the most terrifying thing is not the monster, but the fact that it was born from our own imagination. In Weird Science, what changed their lives was not magic, but the courage to face themselves. Youthful dreams may fade, but the lessons remain quiet, profound, and unforgettable. And sometimes, growing up begins with a mistake we never want to repeat.